Gonzo, you think if we get beat by Brentford tomorrow, they're going to sack David Moyes? I think you're wrong.
Okay. Why?
Why do you believe it? I'll give you my reasons why I think you're wrong, but why do you believe that they will sack David Moyes if we get beat by Brentford?
Because I think there's no evidence for them to suggest that he'll turn it around. I think it sort of would just be blind faith rather than any evidential belief. I think they've said on numerous occasions that you can't lose 5 league games in a row. And I also have to assume there's two more reasons. I have to assume that they've watched some other Premier League games. And I messaged you last night when Leeds were playing Man City, and I said this lot are good. I mean, Leeds, obviously Man City are good. And I just keep on seeing these vibrant, really good teams in the Premier League that seem to be playing, fast-paced football, pressing, and I just think increasingly so that our football looks dated. And I think if I was in their position, I'd be looking at our manager and looking at our style of football and seeing no evidence why we could turn it around. I also think, because I've seen a David Moyes press conference today, or at least snippets of it, you're pulling a face, so I think you're going to quote him on this.
I am, because I've just seen, just before we start recording, I've seen a video from his press conference, which I asked you to do this video. Gonzo didn't know what the video was. I asked him to do, Gonzo said, yeah, we'll jump on. I had seen what he'd said, but I've since then, literally just now, heard what he said, and I am worried. I am really worried, Gonzo.
Okay, well, just to finish up. So I heard the bit, which obviously you did, where they said about the backing of the board, and he didn't even say the board. He said David Sullivan's been great to me. Those more or less were his words. And I also think that whilst that is true, at some point, David Sullivan is not omnipotent. At some point, the phone call comes in. Kretinsky hasn't packed the board full of his people from, Morgan Stanley Chase, and all stuff like that. At some point, the phone call comes in, and I think it comes if David Sullivan hasn't done it for the reasons that I said. I think the phone call comes in, and I'm pretty sure Kretinsky stands off and lets Sullivan do what he wants. But I think the phone call comes in after this, and it's just, oi, what's going on with the manager? Yeah, that's my reason.
I'm convinced he's here for Leeds. I am utterly convinced that if we lose tomorrow, barring getting annihilated by Brentford 3-4-0, which I don't think we will. If we lose, I think it'll be by a goal, 2 at worst, because if you look at our results this season, they have been narrow defeats in terms of score lines. 1-0 away to Everton, 1-0 at Anfield, we missed a pen, 1-0 away to Man United. If a neutral was looking at our scores and they were watching us on Match of the Day and watching us on Match of the Day only, they would probably believe the narrative that David Moyes is trotting out. And Moyes is very much saying, we are unlucky. The reason that we've lost 10 of our 16 games is because we're unlucky. The reason we're 1 point outside of relegation is we're unlucky. And if a neutral's listening to that and watching West Ham and looking at the scores, they possibly believe it. They go, well, hang on a minute. They got mugged off at Stamford Bridge. They deserved a point. They conceded in the very last kick of the game to Crystal Palace via a wicked deflection. They possibly have been a bit unlucky. But generally, under David Moyes, we don't really get thrashed. And I don't think we will tomorrow against Brentford. I'm not saying we won't lose. I'm saying we won't get thrashed. And that's why I'm utterly convinced Moyes is here. I've just seen his press conference when the journalist said to him, oh, you're under pressure. And Moyes laughed. Moyes basically laughed at him and said, oh, I think your sources are wrong on that. And the journalist had to clarify, well, it's not my sources. It's in the newspapers. I'm just giving the question. But Moyes batted that away. Well, I've got a great relationship with David Sullivan. We've lost a few games. Never mind. But anyway, even before that, I was convinced he wasn't going. And the biggest thing that gave me an alarm bell was probably Mark Noble's comments while he's been going around doing a lot of interviews and podcasts recently promoting his book. And he's technically unemployed presently. So he's got no contract in place stopping him doing this. He can go do what he wants, and possibly why he's not starting until the middle of January, so that he can go around getting in as much money as possible for his book and stuff. And along there, you've seen it, we've all seen it, we basically said, in regards to Moyes being under pressure, it's the social media law, he basically said that, and he very strangely and unfairly, I think, compared it to Liverpool fans being unhappy with Jurgen Klopp, and I think the two are completely different, by the way, but that was an insight. I see Mark Noble as almost like a voice of the boardroom now. Do you feel the same? Or
yes, yep. Carry on, yeah, absolutely.
So when Mark Noble says that, I almost feel as if it's the message from the board or the thoughts collectively of the boardroom. And that was during the World Cup. It was only a week or two ago. It was during the World Cup break. So since then, we've lost against Arsenal, and that's it. And I don't believe a defeat against Arsenal and defeat against Brentford is enough to swing the pendulum from keeping Moyes to sacking David Moyes. And I think if they were going to dismiss David Moyes, that Mark Noble would be heavily involved, even though he doesn't officially start yet. If you look back at the Ollie Scarles announcement, Mark Noble's there. He's at the table with Ollie Scarles in his suit with his arm around him and stuff. So he's clearly involved in the club's activities, although he's not formally began his role. So he would be involved in discussions. And I think to hear him say that, I just thought this guy's safe. This guy, I say safe. He's got another 2 or 3 games left in him. Worst case or best case scenario, depending on what side of the fence you sit on. And I just can't see him getting sacked, Gonzo. I think we might lose, and he'll be here for Leeds regardless. And I'm worried. It worries me a lot that he will get that Leeds game as well, because what happens if we win that? This is my fear. If we lose against Brentford and win against Leeds, then what? It just resets this stupid 3-game counter thing. And I hate it. I really hate it. But I just don't see. I've been trying to convince myself they might sack him if we get beat. I just can't do it. I'm completely opposite. I'm convinced he's staying.
Yeah, look, I understand. I understand your reason. Okay, let's deal with that bit by bit. Okay, so Mark Noble. Yes, he's been giving these interviews. Mark Noble probably needs to be a little bit careful. And I say this as somebody who's done a video this week praising Mark Noble and saying that stuff that went on the pitch against Arsenal wouldn't have happened with Mark Noble. I praise his leadership qualities. Got no axe to grind with Mark Noble. But Mark Noble probably needs to be a bit careful. Otherwise, his sporting director role could well be over before it's begun. He's got to really be careful that he doesn't back the wrong horse here to the detriment. David Moyes is in murky waters. I'm not massively offended, by the way, by the thing about... there's a lot of experts out here. You know, I'm pretty sure not only is it aimed at the crowd, it's probably aimed at people like us as well. And we're seen as the social media lot or whatever. I'm not overly offended by it. That's fine. You know, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. We're going to sit here and talk about David Moyes. He's got every right to come back. And I wish he would more, actually. I wish he would address it more. I wish we were, I just mean us at Hammers Chat, but for some time now, I've thought that the newspaper, the written press, aren't really reflective. I don't think it's where West Ham fans go for their news and their West Ham content anymore. I don't think we are flicking through CFAX anymore. I think people have got their favourite websites, their favourite podcasts, their favourite YouTube channels, their favourite West Ham stuff, and I think that's where it is. So I wish he would come back more at us, but I don't think he does. But if Mark Noble's going to align himself in that camp where actually the noise is just from a little bit of social media, it's not reflective of the fans, he's not being totally true, because actually it is reflecting a lot of the fans. And I think, as you alluded to in the preview, we may well see the upshot of that. If things don't go so well against Brentford, you may well see that in the stadium, which is going to be a lot harder for him to bat away. I also think that as much as he is being given these roles, and he may well be able to have an influence in Ollie Scarles' contract and be front of house, he's no more in charge of things than the concierge is in charge of the hotel. And I think it being front of house is one thing. I think, and I know you're not saying this, so this isn't. You're not putting words in my mouth, right? So I'm not putting words in your mouth. But if the thing is, it's time to get rid of David Moyes, and then Mark Noble is saying no, I think David Sullivan turning around to Kretinsky and saying, "Oh, we can't get rid of David Moyes because Mark Noble says no." Daniel Kretinsky might say, "Sorry, who?" So you might have a little bit of that going on as well. Despite, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, which is why I front loaded what I said with my respect for Mark Noble. I really, really do. So there is that. Getting on to the Leeds game. What if we won against Leeds? Oh, I wish. That sounds really nice. Again, I saw precious little evidence when they were buzzing around.
That's my worry, though, that if we do get beaten, he survives, that we go to Ellen Road and get a result. I think it's perfectly feasible that we could win one of the 2 games, and it's just this. And this goes back into, I guess, more points that sort of make me think he's going to stay, and that's the unofficial messaging we start to see from the board getting leaked here, there, and everywhere. And it happens with every other manager. It happens with players quite a lot as well. And I'll hide it in here. I'll predict you now that we're going to see with Ben Johnson in the coming month. It might not be for a while yet, but I think the Ben Johnson stuff will start coming out if he doesn't sign that new contract soon, because it'll be to control the narrative, which is we've given Ben Johnson a really lucrative offer and he's rejected it. Bad boy, so we sell him. Make sure you side with the club on this one because he's been a bad boy and won't sign that deal. We've seen it with players in the past, whether it be the youngsters or more established players, and we've seen it with the managers. Slaven Bilic, it felt like every day we were opening up a new story about Slaven Bilic doing this or doing that. And the biggest one was obviously the Kelechi, Iheanacho and Chicharito decision that had to be made. They went with Slaven, and it got leaked, if you like, very clearly. The board didn't agree with the decision, but they're backing the manager. These things get leaked to undermine the manager, to control the narrative, and I feel to turn the fan base against the manager, so that you dismiss him, the fan base go, well, yeah, that's fine, I agree with that. I'm not saying that's what happens, but I'm saying that's what the board try and attempt to do. And I feel like I'm starting to see it with David Moyes now a little bit, where they're trying to just push a little bit of the blame on Moyes for stuff. And to some extent, I can understand why on this occasion. They've spent 180 million, they backed him in the summer. They're probably looking around going, hang on a minute, what the hell's going on here? But the story that came out during the week, that correct me if I get the wording wrong, but it's something like he's on thin ice at the minute.
Yes,
but he shouldn't be. And I found that a very strange phrase, as if to say, well, we don't really think he should be under pressure, but he is. You lot are putting him under pressure. I'm not sure what they meant by he's on thin ice, but he shouldn't be. What was your interpretation of it?
I didn't read it like that. That is funny, but you are right. It's funny, I didn't read it like that. I read it like he's on thin ice. We desperately would love him to win, but if we don't, he's in trouble. I don't just mean win the Brentford game. We desperately want him to turn it around. We're offering him some help. We think he needs a new striker. We said we'll find the funds. That's very much saying, look, we're generous. We're benevolent. I'll find it. Don't worry. We've spent plenty. The reminder is there, by the way, the constant reminder. Oh, we've spent whatever it is, 170, 180 million, whatever you believe it to be. We've spent 170 million, but don't worry. We know we spent a lot. We're kind. We're nice. We'll find some more. We'll give him to Dave Moyes. Oh, he doesn't want it. There you go. It's very much that tone. We've said you need another striker, Dave. He said it's enough. Scamacca and Antonio is enough. It's almost delivered. I'm doing the tone. That's my tone. That's how I've read it. That's my tone of voice on there. I think it's preparing. I do think it's preparing the path. I do think that, but I don't think they're saying it's only bad. I didn't read it as it's only bad news. He's only thin ice because you lot are putting the pressure on. I think they're desperately keen to be seen to do the right thing. And I think
do you believe that striker thing, by the way, that striker story? Do you believe that they've offered him money or a striker? Because when they said we've offered him a striker, it's sort of like, well, are you offering him a particular striker or are you offering him cash to go get a striker? It's two different things, really. Are you back at Gabigol again?
Yes. I think they're always offering him. Yes, that's how I perceived it to be. I think they're always offering him players. I think it goes back to the interview I did with Barry Siltman a while ago. Even Barry said he can't help himself, Sullivan. He said it might not be all the time, but I think he said something like 1 in 20, and he'll just say, I found this little right back in
but it's vague, though. It's vague, though, isn't it? We have offered him a striker, but what does that mean? You've offered him a particular player, him, or as in, here's 20 million, you want a striker? Which is it? Because technically, they're both covered by the phrase, we offered him a striker.
But it's propaganda. It's how much you believe it, whether you believe he's being given 50 million.
Oh, mate, I believe nothing.
Or you don't. It's propaganda from the board. They're saying, look how generous, and this is how good we are. But they're all at it. And no one's particularly good at it, but because we see through it. Just like David Moyes in this press conference that you've just watched, he said, well, maybe I'm a victim of my own overachievement. He's basically saying, I overachieved, West Ham should be doing crap. Now, that's his narrative, and that's his propaganda. But what that does for him to make his point, he has to strip out the 180, 170 million, because actually that doesn't fit with that, does it? And if you go back and listen to what he said, when David Moyes turned around and said, well, I think your sources are wrong, listen to the stutter and the nervousness in the journalist's voice when he then speaks. You are hearing a nervous...
Oh, yeah, he slams it into reverse and you can hear his tires screeching.
He's like that. And I don't think that's a particularly healthy position to be in, because I think that's part of the act as well. David Moyes has got this scary dude demeanour where thou shalt not question David Moyes or even be overly familiar with him. And he wants, and that's fine. He can try and create an environment where he can control that press conference. That's absolutely up to him. What you've got to be is you're going to have to be a good journalist to try and force that through. And we used to have these conversations, Geo, about if we ever got the interview with Sam Allardyce and stuff like that. And you used to say, I'm going to really have to force this through and stuff like that. And we really tried. And there's been a number of them where you've got to ask tough questions, and he makes it so the journalist can't. But that's his version of it. That's his propaganda. Basically, West Ham reporters. West Ham are a relegation team. I've come here. I've kept them up. I've done so well. But that strips out the fact we've got a 60,000 stadium. It strips out the fact that we've got players on over 100 grand a week. It strips out the fact that we got proper internationals in our team. It strips out the fact that he spent 180 million. And it strips out the fact that actually when he turned up, he actually already turned up. And there was a 45 million pound striker here, a 36 million pound winger. All that stuff is stripped out for David Moyes to make his point. But the board are doing it as well. Because they will strip out. Sorry. So you're getting him a striker. Right. Okay. So you're not going to go and get him the best striker in the Championship or the best striker, the third best striker in the Bundesliga. You are talking about a loan signing from River Plate reserves.
Yeah, well, that's why I think it is a loan signing from River Plate reserves, because why would you back David Moyes if you were intending on possibly sacking him? Bear in mind, the January transfer window opens after the Brentford games. It's not even open yet. You could feasibly be sacked prior to it even opening. Why would you give him money after the 180 million spend up and you've seen the results? It just doesn't make sense. That's why I thought it possibly meant a particular striker. And just because David Moyes is struggling at the minute, and I don't think he should be the manager of West Ham United, it doesn't mean I trust the board. It's possible to do both, which is, I don't like him and I don't trust them. And it's possible to do both. And that's where I am at the moment. When I see stuff like that, and I still get a bit, I don't know what the word is. It's not offended. I wouldn't say I'm upset. I get frustrated, I guess, by these unofficial messages that come out and get stuff leaked like that. I just think it's unhealthy and unhelpful. And they should be doing all they can to help their manager to get through this. If they believe he's the one to turn it around, and they must believe that, if not, get rid of him now. Because if you decide he might not be, you're done. Just get rid of him. That's why I hate the 3-game thing. It's almost just lacking bollocks. That's all it is. If you get to the point where you've got to threaten the manager, you've got 3 games to save your job, you've already decided he's not good enough. You just don't have the bollocks to sack him, or you just haven't found a replacement for him yet, and you've probably got no faith in doing the second one. Otherwise, you'd sack him and then go find the replacement. And that's where I think this board fall down, where they just don't have that. They just don't have the bravery involved to sack the manager, make a decision, and go. And they also don't have the know-how, or even know who to go get. They possibly don't even know who they want, but they don't have the ability to go get their number one choice of manager. When have they ever got their number one choice of manager at West Ham United? They haven't. They're always struggling to get the man they want in. You go back to Avram Grant. Look what happened there this season. Smacks of it, really, which is, we'll go after Mark. Oh, no, sorry, I don't want that job. You've got Avram. This is unfair on Avram. Do one. All right, well, we'll just keep Avram then. And this board are not good at making decisions in regards to their managers or replacing their managers. And that's why I think Moyes is here to stay for a few weeks at least, really. Moyes is talking that press conference. You try and analyse it a little bit. You can't help it. You're looking at him thinking, is he just putting on a brave face? And then he starts talking about, every manager bar 2 is under pressure. I think, well, that's not really the point here, though, is it? That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about getting sacked immediately. There's 1 or 2 managers in the Premier League at that point. It's you and Frank Lampard. The rest of them are a few games away from this yet. So is he unaware he's under pressure? Is he even under any pressure? Is he aware he just doesn't care? Is he aware and he's worried and this is all just a mask that he's putting on for everybody and he's dismissing it and almost going on the offensive? I actually think he's calling David Sullivan's bluff a little bit, which is, I've got an excellent relationship with David Moyes.
Yeah, I think
David
you're
Sullivan,
right.
he's probably thinking, go on then, Sullivan, sack me now after I've said that. Pretty much calling you out in public here. Go on then, sack me. But yeah, Gonzo, honestly, I think, barring a hiding tomorrow night, I think he's here. Come Ellen Road, I think he's in that dugout. As simple as that, really.
I wouldn't put any money against it. I just think there would be so much massive pressure and all the things that I said. The trouble is, the board are the ownership equivalent of David Moyes. They lack foresight and they lack planning, and they very much stick to what they were doing probably when they're at Birmingham, and probably David Moyes sticks to what he was doing when he was at Preston, and there's probably a level of comfort blanket with them and each other on that. That being said, they're not at Birmingham anymore. They don't own all the shares. They are planning on selling, and they will not. Their ultimate dream and their ultimate plan will not happen if they get relegated. And here's the problem with David Moyes. And does he feel secure? I don't. It's not. I'm past caring. I think he lacks awareness in his league position. I think he lacks awareness tactically. I think he lacks awareness with how his team are playing. I think he lacks awareness with how other managers are performing and how they're doing it. So I don't suddenly think he's going to get awareness about his job security, because he doesn't seem to have it in regard to anything else at all. And I'm not surprised. There was nothing surprising in that press conference.
No.
But for me, at all, it's exactly what I would expect him to do. I don't think it's a particularly nice thing for him to have to do, but you do reap what you sow. So those press conferences are as uncomfortable as he has made them, and this is when you're dealing with the journalists. And I do feel the journalists in the written press are probably very different from, going back to what you said at the start of the video, which are this outward view looking in of West Ham, which is reading into the narrative that we were unlucky, that it's marginal, that actually nothing has really changed since we were finished in 6th in the Premier League. And I mean, nothing has changed at West Ham, and also other teams haven't improved. People, and I use him as an example because for me, Alan Shearer represents what I'm talking about in terms of the established ex-pro media. But it could be Alan Shearer, it could be Paul Merson, it could be any number of them. They are loath to criticise someone like David Moyes and actually say the words, this guy's probably lost it and needs to go. They don't have any of those. They're not there. They do not want to do it. So then it comes down to the written press, because we can't do it because we're not involved. We're outsiders. And David Moyes is quite within his rights to try and manage the written press when he sits down at his press conference and be moody and be mean and be grumpy and, oh, don't you call me Moisey, and all the rest of it. But there comes a point when actually it's not just outward pressure. The pressure is tangible pressure, and the pressure is there from actually the points or lack of them in the league. The pressure is there from league position. The pressure is there because of what happens on the pitch. And at that point, there's an old saying, be really nice to people on the way up because you'll probably see them all again on the way down. And he's probably now in a position where he probably needs those people in that press conference, and maybe, just maybe, might realise that he should have been a little bit. I'm not suggesting he's unpleasant, but I think he could have played the room a little bit better than he has done. And I'm not sure how much longer he's got in him, sat down trying to intimidate 20 journalists.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about the board's plan, which is an 11, 12-year plan, essentially, which is getting to that stadium, and then we'll flog it as a Premier League club. If anything, it's probably exceeded their own plan by jumping into European football at the end of it. Oh, hang on a minute, this is lucky, and it comes worth more than ever. And also, the accounts have come out today, haven't they? Which gives you,
okay.
Yeah, the accounts have come out today, which gives you a firm valuation of West Ham United, approximately 625 million, based on what Kretinsky paid for his stake, for his 27% stake. So it gives you a very firm number as to what West Ham United are worth in the eyes of Daniel Kretinsky and in the eyes of David Gold and David Sullivan. And they need to protect that asset. And the only thing that sort of contradicts my own thing, when I was saying the board won't sack him, they don't know who to get, is Sean Dyche is out of work. And I'm convinced that that's the next manager Moyes does go. And while he's out of work, he's only out of work for so long. There's one or two tasty jobs in the Championship. Norwich City's just come up, a team in the playoffs with a reasonable budget and playing squad in that league that could see Dyche be a Premier League manager next season. 7 months work, bang, back in the Premier League. Here I go. The Everton job may crop up as well in the next few weeks, and you'd imagine Dyche would be near the top of that list as well. So again, there is something that may just force their hand a little bit. That is if Dyche is the one that they want. But we know that Karen Brady's a big fan of him, and it was between him and David Moyes previously as to which one they try and get in and stuff like that. So, yeah, anyway, we'll wait and see. Anything you'd like to add on the topic before we disappear?
No, there's a lot to run.
Yes.
There's a lot more. There's a lot more videos to come, boys and girls. I'm sorry to say. There you go. It's a hot topic. It really is.
Anyway, if you've enjoyed this discussion, please drop a like on it by clicking the thumbs up under this video. It helps the channel out a little bit. And subscribe to you around here as well. Approximately a third of you that watch our videos on both channels are unsubscribed. So get subscribed. It's free and takes about 10 seconds. Myself and Gonzo will be live at 6:40 tomorrow evening with our build-up show ahead of the game. It'll be interesting to see what 11 David Moyes has picked, isn't it? But he did tell us in the press conference he's going to do what he's always been doing. We'll catch you then.